December 21st, 1988. It's a routine Pan Am flight, Flight 103, making its way across the Atlantic. It's high above southern Scotland, and then just violently and instantly, it's torn apart over this small, quiet town of Lockerbie.
And this single tragedy claimed 270 lives.
And that's not just passengers and crew.
No, that includes residents on the ground. And it launched an investigation that, well, it lasted for more than a decade. It became one of the most controversial, most complex inquiries in modern legal history.
We've really stacked up the sources today to guide you through the whole narrative. We're looking at the volatile geopolitical conflict that, birthed the motive,
The missed warnings.
the crucial intelligence warnings that were missed, and then the painstaking microscopic forensic work that finally, 13 years later, delivered a conviction.
It's an incredible story.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission is to understand the long, devastating chain of conflict that took a state-level feud and turned it into an act of terror delivered by an ordinary suitcase.
Exactly. And to understand the bomb, the mechanism of it, you first have to grasp the context of the hostility.
Yeah.
We are looking at a geopolitical storm that was gathering force in the shadows of international politics all through the 1980s, long before Pan Am 103 ever left the runway.
And the focal point of that tension, as our sources really detail, was this escalating confrontation between the United States and Muammar Gaddafi's Libya.
That's right. The central flashpoint was the Gulf of Sidra. Libya claimed it was entirely their territorial water. They essentially declared it a line of death.
A line of death. And the U.S. Navy, of course, operating under the International Doctrine of Freedom of Navigation, just routinely and openly challenged that. And those challenges, they weren't just diplomatic notes, they were kinetic. We saw incidents where U.S. fighter jets shot down Libyan aircraft.
And crucially, Libyan ships were sunk.
These were not minor incidents. These were, for all intents and purposes, acts of war that were pushing both nations right toward open conflict.
The conflict then, it metastasized. It spread. By 1986, the violence spills into Europe with the bombing of the La Belle nightclub in West Berlin.
A place frequented by American soldiers.
Exactly. And Washington was unequivocal. They held Libya responsible for coordinating that attack.
And the U.S. response was swift. And it was massive. President Reagan ordered these huge, large-scale, overnight airstrikes targeting Tripoli and Benghazi.
Including Gaddafi's own compound. This was direct state-on-state retaliation.
And the sources show that this one event, it just fundamentally changed the dynamic.
It did. It humiliated Gaddafi on a global stage. While the U.S. claimed it was a success, Gaddafi used the event to solidify his support at home. He claimed the airstrikes killed his adopted daughter.
A fact that's still disputed, but it was politically very potent.
Oh, absolutely. Whether it was true or not, that trauma hardened his internal mandate for revenge. He'd faced military defeat, global isolation, and well, out of that bitterness, the strategy shifted. It went from open warfare to covert, asymmetrical, state-sponsored terrorism.
So that kinetic conflict clearly set the stage, but the sources indicate the pivot point was finding the operational capability. So the Libyan motive needed an engine.
It did.
And that engine was the specific terror cell tasked with carrying out the revenge.
That brings us to a very specific group. Ahmed Jibril, leader of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command, the PFLPGC.
Right.
He had the operational capability.
Yeah.
And his group included key operatives like Hafez Dalkamoni and, crucially, a highly skilled bomb maker named Marwan Kresat.
And the sources show this cell was already closely monitoring Pan Am operations. I mean, they were arrested in Frankfurt in October of '88.
Just weeks before the bombing.
Exactly. And records show they'd been surveilling Pan Am's facilities at the airport there, noting every logistical vulnerability, every passenger, every detail of the luggage handling.
So the link here is critical. Libya provided the funding and the motive.
And the PFLPGC provided the expertise and the infrastructure. The whole goal was to make this bomb completely undetectable and untraceable.
Here's where the narrative turns genuinely tragic. Because a specific, very detailed warning that could have averted the entire disaster had already been received, and then it was just ignored.
Incomprehensibly ignored.
We're talking about the chilling warning call of December 5th, 1988, so 16 days before the bombing. A man with an Arabic accent calls the U.S. Embassy in Helsinki, Finland.
And this intelligence wasn't vague, was it?
Not at all. The caller claimed a Pan Am flight from Frankfurt to the U.S. would be blown up within 2 weeks. He even attributed the attack to the Abu Nidal organization.
Which turned out to be a deliberate smokescreen.
A smokescreen, yes. But most importantly, he mentioned the bomb would be carried by an unwitting passenger on a flight originating in Frankfurt.
That warning was real, it was urgent, and it was so precise. Yet, what the sources detail is just a devastating bureaucratic failure. That alert, it was initially treated with high urgency.
As it should have been.
Right, it was disseminated internally, but somehow failed to connect to the operational security teams on the ground in Frankfurt. It just slipped into the shadows, lost in the sheer volume of daily threats.
It ended up unnoticed in a stack of paper at the very airport the attack was launched from.
It's incredible that the U.S. had that level of detail in the Helsinki warning. How did that specific tip not trigger an immediate systemic review of security at Frankfurt? I mean, it was clearly indicated as the origin point.
It really speaks to the failure of intelligence sharing between agencies internationally. But also, you have to understand the sheer volume of noise at the time. Intelligence officers are constantly sifting through hundreds, maybe thousands of threats.
So this one just looked like many others.
It did, but the details. Frankfurt, Pan Am, 2 weeks, those should have elevated it to the highest priority. It just didn't make the jump to the security perimeter.
So on December 21st, 1988, that failure, it became lethal. Pan Am Flight 103 began its journey, ironically, on a smaller Boeing 727 feeder flight from Frankfurt, Germany.
And the critical point is the transfer. The transfer that happened at London Heathrow Terminal 3. You have 243 passengers from 21 different nations being moved to the waiting Boeing 747, the Clipper made of the seas.
And crucially,
the sources confirm that due to a massive security loophole, an unaccompanied suitcase containing the bomb was also transferred from that feeder flight into the 747's forward cargo hold.
The crew was seasoned. Captain James McQuarrie, First Officer Raymond Wagner, and Flight Engineer Jerry Averitt. They pushed back just after 6 p.m., took off at 18.25, and climbed out over the UK, bound for New York's JFK.
The flight was completely routine for about 40 minutes. At 18.58, high above southern Scotland, the Clipper made of the seas makes its final contact with Shanwick Oceanic Control in Prestwick.
And Captain McQuarrie's voice on the recording is just the sound of complete normalcy. Good evening, Scottish. Clipper 103. We are level at 310.
Meaning 31,000 feet.
4 minutes later, at 19.02, the aircraft crosses the Scottish coastline, holding a speed of well over 500 miles per hour. They're just settling in for the long transatlantic crossing.
And then 44 seconds after the clock ticked past 7.02 p.m., everything stopped. Scottish Air Traffic Control transmitted oceanic clearance, the standard procedure for leaving UK airspace.
And there was no reply.
No reply from Clipper 103.
Then the defining final sound. At 19.02 and 50 seconds, the cockpit voice recorder, the CVR, it captures a single, violent, deafening burst. And you have to remember that CVR is designed to record everything in the flight deck.
And that single burst was all it recorded. The sources confirmed the event was so instantaneous that no distress call was even possible. The force of the explosion just instantly severed the flight deck's communication systems.
So the CVR recorded what? Just a hiss?
Only a 180 millisecond hiss before going completely silent.
And on the radar screen, that massive bright green trace of the 747 just vanished. Its transponder went dark, and moments later, that one large blip was replaced by 5 separate, smaller blips fanning out across the night sky.
Let's talk about the physics of it, because that explains why survival was just impossible. The small but expertly placed bomb ripped a 50-centimeter hole into the left side of the forward cargo hold.
And that breach instantly exposed the pressurized cabin to the thin, cold air at 31,000 feet, so you get this catastrophic pressure differential.
Exactly. The air inside the cabin, which is compressed to sea level pressure, suddenly explodes outward, trying to equalize with the atmosphere outside.
And that pressure surge, moving at an incredible speed.
It instantly severed the primary flight control cables leading to the elevators and the rudder. At the same time, the force of the blast and that rapid decompression caused the nose section of the 747 to blow clean off within just 3 seconds.
The nose section actually twisted backward, striking the number 3 engine, and plunged toward the countryside near a place called Tundergar.
And the rest of the fuselage, still mostly intact but totally crippled, entered a near vertical dive at 19,000 feet. The airframe just started tearing itself apart on the way down. The tail, the vertical stabilizer, the horizontal stabilizers, they all disintegrated under the immense aerodynamic stress.
The final devastating impact was focused on the ground in Lockerbie. The massive, heavy wing box structure, the center of the aircraft,
still containing 91,000 kilograms of highly flammable jet fuel,
slammed into a street called Sherwood Crescent.
Traveling at over 800 kilometers per hour, that impact it completely wiped out the houses, creating a crater more than 150 feet wide. The fuel ignited this firestorm that was visible for miles.
The sheer violence of it was later measured seismically. I mean, 23 kilometers away, the British Geological Survey in Eskdalemuir registered the impact as a 1.6 magnitude seismic shock.
And the casualties casualties, the 259 crew and passengers, were then compounded by the death of 11 residents on the ground. The local loss was just devastatingly specific. Entire families were lost on Sherwood Crescent,
including 2 elderly widows, aged 82 and 81, who were the oldest victims of the attack.
Amid that scene of just absolute destruction, the sources reveal these extraordinary moments of human resilience. The community of Lockerbie responded to the chaos with this profound compassion.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the immediate non-official response. Faced with foreign debris and bodies scattered across 2,000 square kilometers, the residents of Lockerbie, they just opened their doors.
To everyone, emergency workers, investigators, grieving families from around the globe, they set up canteens, providing comfort, hot meals, tea, relentlessly.
And they took this painstaking, quiet care. Local volunteers meticulously undertook the task of washing, drying, and ironing every single recovered piece of clothing and personal belongings.
An incredible act.
It was. This effort ensured that once the investigation was done, these items could be returned to the victims' families with dignity. It's a remarkable act of kindness and a necessary moment of light before we have to go back into the shadow of the investigation, which was, by necessity, coldly methodical.
Indeed. And the scope of that investigation was immense. The terrorists intended for the plane to crash into the sea, erasing all the evidence.
But it didn't.
No. The explosion over land scattered millions of pieces of wreckage across a massive search grid, over 2,000 square kilometers of Scotland.
So investigators were tasked with analyzing over 15,000 witness statements and cataloging every single fragment they recovered. They were looking for the smallest clues in this vast, chaotic landscape. I mean, a needle in 1,000 haystacks.
And they found them. The physical evidence led the investigators through 3 crucial steps. First, they recovered fragments of the container, so pieces of a brown Samsonite suitcase that held the bomb.
Okay.
Second, they found debris from the detonator parts of a Toshiba Bombbeat RT SF-16 radio cassette player that was used to conceal the device.
And the third, most critical piece of physical evidence:
items of baby clothing, later confirmed to have been placed inside the bomb suitcase, which were traced back to a specific small clothing shop in Malta.
And that clothing trail, that led directly to the suspect.
It was established that on December 7th, 1988, Abdelbagasset al-Megrahi, a key Libyan intelligence officer, purchased these specific articles of clothing from a Maltese merchant named Tony Gauci.
And Gauci later positively identified him.
He did, creating an undeniable physical link between the Libyan operative and the very garments found inside the bomb suitcase.
But the real technical breakthrough came from something even smaller.
Microscopic, really. A small fragment of a circuit board found embedded in charred material recovered from the wreckage. This was identified as part of an MST-13 electronic timer.
This detail was the smoking gun, wasn't it?
It was. Investigators traced this highly specific device through its Swiss manufacturer, a company called Mebo, and they determined that Mebo had previously supplied these exact timers only to the Libyan military.
That's the connection.
That is the direct technical connection. A Mebo employee, Ulrich Lumpert, provided critical testimony, confirming the fragment's identity and its lineage at the trial. That provided the final, undeniable technical link from the bomb found in Scotland all the way back to the Libyan intelligence apparatus.
This exhaustive effort finally led to the arrests. So on November 13th, 1991, indictments were issued against 2 Libyan nationals.
Abdelbagasset al-Megrahi, identified as the head of security for Libyan Arab Airlines and a Libyan intelligence officer.
And Lamin Khalifa Fima, the airline's station manager at Lucca Airport in Malta.
The trial, which was famously held under Scottish law but in the Netherlands, concluded years later on January 31st, 2001. Megrahi was found guilty of 270 counts of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Fima was acquitted.
Megrahi was later controversially released years after his conviction on compassionate grounds. He had a terminal cancer diagnosis. But the verdict itself stood as this powerful testament to forensic persistence.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire trajectory is just stunning. It shows the devastating consequences of a Cold War-era conflict between global nations, a conflict that boiled over into state-sponsored terror.
And the proof of that terror was found not in treaties or military maneuvers.
No, but through a trail that led to a tiny fragment of a circuit board and a transaction in a small Maltese clothing shop.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Well, the key takeaway is the immense global effort required to extract truth from chaos. The investigation had to follow a physical and political trail that spanned from a transatlantic jet to a piece of clothing bought in a Mediterranean island store. It really revealed the extraordinary challenge of prosecuting state-sponsored terror, where the violence is designed to be untraceable, executed not with the overt threat of warships, but with a highly sophisticated bomb hidden in an ordinary Samsonite suitcase.
The ultimate lesson of Pan Am 103, I think, centers on that thin line between intelligence and action. Consider the implications of how the final serene moments of the Clipper Maid of the Seas might have been altered if that single, specific, and unheeded warning call to the U.S. Embassy in Helsinki just weeks prior had been prioritized and acted upon by the right people at the right time. Something profound to think about until the next time we take the deep dive.